Today we're talking about a pretty heavy topic, racism. Sadly, even though we're all supposed to be treated equally and be nice to each other, every place on Earth has racism. Some places, a lot more than others. We did this video a few years ago about the United States. After that one went up, we got emails and comments asking us to do one about countries. So here we are. To do this, we went off data released by the United Nations and a study done by the University of Pennsylvania. And that's what we're doing today. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Sri Lanka. Kicking things off, we got Sri Lanka, a place most of you have never heard of. If you do know of it, you know it's got stunning beaches, lush tea plantations, and a really cool culture. But beneath the tropical vibes, there's a tougher reality for some, especially the Tamil people. Have you ever heard of Tamil people? Well, most of them live in North and East Sri Lanka, or in the southern India state of Tamil Nadu, which translates to Tamil country. But this minority group has had a rough time for years, facing discrimination in key areas like education and jobs. This is the last classical civilization because for over 2,000 years, they've kept their culture and their language alive. According to the U.S. State Department, Tamils struggle more than most when it comes to accessing basic things like healthcare and housing. The stats don't lie. It's a significant issue in Sri Lanka. And let's not forget the 26-year-long civil war that has torn the country apart. Even though the war ended in 2009, the scars are still there, and the Tamil community continues to feel the aftershocks. While Sri Lanka is a beautiful place with beautiful people, there's some ugliness beneath all that. Now, before we go, we're talking about the countries, but really we're talking about the people there, because every time I say something like that, it's just easier to put up a video that says the most racist countries instead of the most racist people in a country that, I'll always get those comments. The country's not racist, the people are racist. Or the country doesn't hate other countries, the people do. We get it. Number 9, El Salvador. Coming in at number 9, you've got El Salvador. Now, on paper, the law says that you can't treat people unfairly because of their race, but the reality isn't following the letter of the law. Afro-descendant and indigenous communities regularly face systematic racial discrimination, which basically means it's built into everyday systems. Even the U.S. State Department has flagged this issue in El Salvador. Just imagine being denied jobs, opportunities, and even facing violence simply because of who you are and who you were raised by. That's a pretty rough deal, right? El Salvador, you got some work to do. For context, around 600,000 Salvadorians identify as indigenous, and despite these communities making up a significant portion of the population, they still struggle with access to healthcare, education, and decent employment. Discrimination is deeply ingrained with Afro-descendants and indigenous people, often living in poorer, rural areas with fewer resources and opportunities. It's not just a bad day, it's a daily battle. Number 8, Russia. Russia is ranked number 8, and honestly, there's a lot going on beneath the surface here. Sure, Russia is famous for its jaw-dropping architecture, rich history, cultural contributions, and of course, invading their neighbors. But when it comes to how minority groups are treated, things get a little more complicated and messy. Take the ethnic minorities, for example. Groups from poorer regions, like Buryatia, near the Mongolian border, and Dagestan down there with Chechnya, are being disproportionately sent to the front lines in conflicts compared to other parts of the population. It's not exactly subtle either. It's a strategy that really feels unfair. Like these regions are being used as a resource rather than a valued community. And it doesn't stop there. They hate the Uzbeks. And of course the Romani people. They're also known as Roma, or in English-speaking countries, we kind of call them gypsies. But they're not just from Romania. They're actually an ethnic group that most feel they started off in India and worked their way into Europe. All of Europe, not just Russia. But according to reports, racially motivated attacks have increased, making life for these minorities to feel like they're trapped in a constant cycle of fear and discrimination. In 2020, hate crimes in Russia were reported at the highest levels in over a decade, with targeted violence showing no signs of slowing down. All of this adds up to a troubling picture. While Russia continues to boast about its cultural achievements and historical influence, its treatment of minorities is a glaring issue. Russia's got a whole lot on their plate, but this is one they really need to work on. Number 7, the United Arab Emirate, or UAE. The UAE, famous for its jaw-dropping skyline and being an entire country that could end up on Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous. Remember that show? Yeah, that's how this whole country is. While some folks are cruising around in gold-plated Lamborghinis, others are facing a much harsher reality. These groups of people are stateless, born in the UAE but without citizenship. And without citizenship, they're shut out from the basic rights of healthcare, education, and even getting a legal job. Imagine not being able to see a doctor just because where your family's from. That's the tough life for some of the people living in this land of luxury. Statistically speaking, we're talking about thousands of people, often referred to as Bedouin or stateless. That's what it means in Arabic. Despite being born and raised there, they struggle to get access to everyday things that most people take for granted, like enrolling their kids in school or even applying for a passport. It's a serious issue that's hidden behind the glitz and glamour of the UAE's global image. Number 6, Myanmar. Myanmar's got a lot of problems. First of all, they had a coup a few years back, and Amnesty International says their human rights violations are in a crisis level, and things seem to be getting worse. It's a place that's been through some serious political chaos, especially for minority groups like Muslims. These folks have had it particularly bad, facing discrimination for years, but things really hit rock bottom in 2021 after the military coup. That power grab made an already tough situation even worse. For the Rohingya people, as they're known, life has been nothing short of a nightmare. Over 700,000 people, roughly the size of Denver, were forced to flee their homes just to stay alive. Many crossed the border to Bangladesh, living in overcrowded refugee camps where even basic needs like food and healthcare are hard to come by. I bet it's next to impossible to get a Wi-Fi signal too. Could you imagine having to leave everything you own and everything you know behind, all because staying means risking your life? That's what these people are going through all the time. And it's not like this violence is some distant memory. Attacks, displacement, and persecution are still very much part of daily life for those who haven't managed to escape. In short, Myanmar's situation for minorities is brutal, and the numbers back that up. Number 5, Israel. Yeah, this is going to be a rough one to talk about because of what's going on there right now. I'm just going to give you the facts. I'm not taking a side on this one. I don't know. It's ugly all the way around. At number 5, we have Israel, a country that has a lot going for it, from its deep religious significance to its stunning landscapes. But alongside all that comes major issues that can't be ignored: how the Palestinian people are treated. According to Human Rights Watch, Palestinians face a tough reality. Many are displaced from their homes, and they deal with restrictions on access to healthcare, education, and jobs, all because of their identity. It's like they're stuck behind an invisible wall that makes everyday life an uphill battle. Now, this is all before the war started. For a lot of Palestinians, this isn't something that they read about in the news. It's their daily reality. 5.9 million Palestinian refugees are registered with the UN, many of whom live in camps across the West Bank, Gaza, and neighboring like Lebanon and Jordan. In Gaza alone, unemployment hovers around 45%, and electricity can be available for as little as 4 hours a day. So Israel is at number 5, and I'm not going to get any more into this one. It's just a bad situation. So I'm moving on. Number 4, Iran. Iran ranks number 4 when it comes to places where your ethnicity or religion can really hold you back. It's not just about whether you're from a particular ethnic group like the Kurds and the Baluchis. I think I pronounced that right. Anyway, these people live in parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan and are the majority ethnic group in the region and make up about 2% of Iran's population. Anyway, these religious minorities face all kinds of restrictions. We're talking about serious limits on things like a solid education, landing decent jobs, and even having a say in politics. Stats show that roughly 10% of Iran's population belong to non-Persian ethnic groups, and many of them, along with religious minorities, face this kind of treatment daily. Life in Iran can be like living with a constant no-entry sign on everything you do. Now, I'm just going off the report for this one. I've never been to Iran. I know a whole bunch of Persian people. They're some of the nicest and sweetest people I've ever met. So this one kind of, I believe it. I'm looking at the stats, I'm looking at the reports, but just hard for me to wrap my head around it. Number 3, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia comes in at number 3. Just because it's swimming in oil money doesn't mean everyone's living large. The reality is it's a lot more complicated, especially for non-citizens. Workers from places like Africa and Asia often face some pretty harsh discrimination. Sure, there's laws on the books that say everyone should be treated equally, but in practice, not so much. In Saudi Arabia, your background and your nationality can make or break your experience. And if you're not a citizen, it usually breaks it. Now, Saudi Arabia over the last 10 decades has gotten a lot better, not just with the whole racism issue, but with how they treat their own citizens. You know, I went over this before. Women used to not be able to drive. They fixed that problem and let women drive all the way back in 2018. I know to a lot of Westerners that seems very foreign, and it is, but they're making progress. I mean, here in the United States, it's only been 100 years or so since women could vote. So it's not like we're running a perfect ship, you know? Number 2, Qatar. Yep, that's right, Qatar makes the list. Qatar is one of the few countries with a very small population, which is under 3 million people, that actually wields some power and influence. Most countries that small are really afterthoughts on the global stage. Qatar is not like that, and here's the real mind blower. Out of that almost 3 million people, only about 320,000 are actually citizens. Everyone else is considered a foreigner. Sort of how Alaska has hardly any residents, but they got a whole bunch of bear and moose. Actually, Alaska has double the population of Qatar. Now, Qatar definitely grabbed the world's attention during the 2022 FIFA World Cup, but not all for good reasons. While the stadiums were jaw-dropping and the spectacle was top tier, which it was, there was a darker side behind the scenes. Migrant workers, mostly from South Asia, were brought in to make those stadiums a reality. But instead of fair pay and decent working conditions, many worked brutal hours in dangerous environments, and in some cases, wages never showed up in their bank accounts. Nothing like building something for someone in 120-degree weather for 6 months and then not getting paid. Some reports, which Qatar denies, say between 2010 and 2020, over 6,500 migrant workers died in Qatar. Basically, if you're not a citizen, you probably shouldn't stay there. All right, before we get to number 1, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering where's the United States on this list. Well, out of the 195 countries in the world, they're actually ranked 37th. If you look at what is considered developed countries, there's 36 of those according to the UN. In that case, the United States comes in at number 14. In the comment section below, answer this question. Which country are you surprised was on the list? And what country are you surprised wasn't on the list? All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Serbia. Unfortunately, Serbia is number 1, and again, they're harsh on the Roma people. The gypsies we talked about earlier, they've spread out across Europe. Serbia being in Europe is, part of the whole thing. The level of discrimination they face is more than just occasional issues. It is deeply ingrained in the system. We're talking about challenges in finding jobs, getting an education, and even trying to blend in with society. It's like the deck is stacked against them from the start. No matter how hard they try, the game is rigged. And it's not just the Roma community dealing with this. Ethnic Albanians in Serbia face similar struggles, running into roadblocks at every turn, whether they're trying to land a job, get access to quality education, or simply being treated fairly. These communities often find themselves fighting an uphill battle. Serbia has a Roma population of around 150,000 to 500,000, depending on who you ask. And an unemployment rate amongst them is about 50% compared to the national average of about 10% right now. And when it comes to education, only about 15% of Roma children finish primary school, compared to 90% of non-Roma kids. Ethnic Albanians aren't far behind in terms of facing systematic discrimination, especially in certain regions. They basically treat these people like Lucy did to Charlie Brown. Every time he goes to kick the football, she promises she's not going to pull it away, but as he gets there, she pulls it away at the last second, he falls on his face. Kind of like that. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Kind of a bummer topic, but hey, if you enjoyed this one, you'll probably enjoy one of the 2 videos being shown right now. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.